Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Raw and Fearless podcast. We're kicking it off with the trio that's self-dubbed as the Powerpuff Girls, talking about a myriad of cultural issues relating to our salvation. So let's get into it.
Greetings, Athlins. My name is Rachel. I've been in youth ministry for the last 4 years consistently, but in and out over the years. Before we get into our discussion for today, I'm going to introduce my colleagues. To my right, we have
Jem, and I've been in youth ministry. This is gonna be my 8th year. Before that, I was in Sunday school ministry, and then Jesus just snatched me out and decided go and deal with young people, and that's what I've been doing since. I love it. I didn't at the start, but I love doing it now.
Thank God you do.
Thank God you do. Oh, I'm supposed to go
the
next.
Left
Sorry.
Sorry.
And I'm Bato. I'm currently in pastoral training. I've been in youth ministry. This is my 2nd year. And before that, I was in personal ministry. So yeah, it's very interesting.
And you're young.
And I was
so,
young.
Yeah, you were in youth ministry in your personal life.
Yes, yes. I've always been a youth minister, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Cool.
actively 2 years.
Awesome. So today we get to discuss something that's pretty interesting. So we've done a course on practical theology, and we've learned that practical theology asks 4 key questions, and we're gonna do a run through on that today, just to get to understand culture as a challenge to youth ministry, particularly gender and identity. And I know that's a hot topic. The minute you mention gender identity, the first thing that comes to your mind is the LGBTQ.
It's cancel
Cancel
culture.
I know, right? So I think growing up, we knew there was male, female.
Right.
For I think all of us, it was simple. Life was simple. Like, you're either male, you're female. You grow up, people get married to the opposite sex. That was the in thing. But now we look back, and there is a lot has changed, really. Like, we have celebrities coming out and saying, this is who I am, and it gives since they have so much power and so much authority, it gives the rest the idea that this works, and it's interesting. So part of our project was we consulted the teens we serve in our different spheres, and I remember one of the girls mentioned that at some point in her teenage years, she thought she was attracted to the opposite sex.
Yeah,
then later on,
that.
she realized, this is social media influence, and it was a fad. Like, it looked good. Like,
It's trendy.
It's the in thing.
Yeah.
I know, right? And looking at her comment and comparing even with others, it's just, I don't know what's going on. What's going on?
Yeah,
Lee, what's going on?
There's been so much talk on social media about gender identity, and I think the biggest conversation now is the multiple genders thing.
Yeah.
It's how people identify and what they want to be called, and whether they identify as he or she or them, or I think it's those 3, right? Or is there more?
It's actually interesting you mentioned that. I did a doula course last year. It's by an organization in the UK, and I remember our first class, we were told, kindly change your name. It was a Zoom meeting, right? So kindly change your name to how you'd like us to address you. And I was a bit confused. So it's like, oh, she, they, them, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is
her.
This is the it. Yeah,
This
Oh my
is
God.
so interesting. Yeah, and I also think it's so funny because I think it's also important to note that we are all Kenyan.
Oh,
and,
yes, yeah.
And maybe I think also our backgrounds affect or speak into how we see things.
Yeah,
because
true.
I personally, I grew up in a family with both parents, and gender roles were mostly defined. I think they were unspoken, but they were mostly defined. There was things my dad did, and then there was things my mom did. And then for us as girls, as we grew up, we tended to do more of what we saw my mom doing. Mm-hmm. And for my brother, it's the same. My dad would hang out with him all the time, and then they'd end up, even now you notice tendencies that my brother does that my dad, just roles he's picked up because he saw my dad doing it. So I don't know, I find the gender conversation very interesting because I think even in our questionnaire we asked people what their backgrounds were, because I think that also speaks into what we see. Yeah, and a lot of it, if we are honest, has stemmed from broken families. So that's why there's no there's no defined thing that we should do. Like, people have dictated because of where they've found themselves, they now take up the roles that they see a deficiency in. If I don't have a dad, like you saw your mom playing both the male and female gender. Is that correct? I don't even know what the terms are. Yeah.
Shall interchange them.
Yeah, so that's the conversation now. It's the conversation of like, am I supposed, like, if because I am female, because I'm a girl, am I supposed to stick to female characteristics, or am I allowed to float in between, whether masculine or feminine, or just be whoever I want to be, depending on how I wake up that day? Yeah.
There's actually a teen who asked, why are we so judgmental? Why can't you let us be what we want? If I want to dress like a girl, girls also dress like boys, so what's a big deal?
Right.
And they're just honestly asking, like, what's a big deal? Jem, what's going on?
Jesus needs to come back. That's what my mother says for every cultural issue that comes up, and she's just like, Jesus has been gone for too long. Needs to come back.
It's about time.
Yeah, it's about time. I think I agree with what Bato is saying. A lot of it has to do with everything now has become kind of fluid, and all of it has to do with media. That there are issues that were not issues until someone introduced them to you. Because I think about some of this, like identity in Africa gender identity is still not as big as it is in the West. And even within Africa, you can tell the social classes. There's no kid in Shags. Shags is upcountry. There's no kid in upcountry saying, oh my God, I identify as female, but I was born male. That's not their struggle. There are things that are
been exposed to it,
right? It's never been an option. So you could say, oh, okay, this boy prefers to cook like the mom, or this girl prefers to do things that are normally done by men, but they don't come out saying, oh, I have a gender identity crisis,
right?
Because it's not been presented as an option. So I think a lot of it has to do with influence, and just the fact that we're in a generation that has kind of allowed people to celebrate dysfunction instead of actually deal with it. So this is how we have men out here forming societies. They're just like, all men are like this. I'm like, no, you just don't have morals. It's not that all men are like that. It's you just don't have self-control. So you can't decide that this is the new thing. There are all these women saying, oh, we're taking back control of ourselves. So we're going to be strippers. We're going to be all these weird things. And I'm like, guys, dysfunction is not normal. We don't celebrate dysfunction. We deal with the real issue. So I feel like how we got here is that we have been taught a lot about freedom, but not enough about responsibility. And one of the things is that if you don't understand the why, then it's very hard to keep a conviction. So we're told that, your dad is supposed to do 1, 2, 3. But you're like, I'm female and I can actually do it. And like in my case, I remember I used to hang out with my dad a lot, and I'd be fascinated by things he does. My dad was an engineer, so I'm like, when he's taking apart things, it would be very fascinating. I'm like, if I was growing up now, I'd probably have been told, you're a bit boyish. And there's a few years in my teenagehood where I was just like, boy fashion is more comfortable.
I was very tomboy as well.
Yeah. So right now I would have been told that, when society would try and push us. Society would have tried to push us into a box. But I don't think that your gender identity has anything to do with roles. Like, there are moments where women have had to step up in history because men are not there to do what they usually do. But that doesn't change your identity. So I feel like how we got here is that we decided that we are not dealing with the real issue, and everything is fluid. Anybody can be whatever it is they want to be, and nobody's going to ask questions.
And for a generation that hates labels so much,
they have a lot of them.
Have a lot of labels for everything.
Yeah, it's an oxymoron. It's like, I don't want to be put in a box, but I'm putting myself in a box. As I say, I don't want to be put in a box.
So I'm creating other boxes for me to.
The keyword, do you?
Yeah.
B, why do you think this is going on? Like, how did we get here?
Why do I think it's going on? I
Yeah.
think it's, I would attribute a lot of it to exposure. And what Jem said, I think it's social media. Social media has introduced a lot of diversity of thought.
Yeah.
So because now we're celebrating people who think differently from us and now accepting it as normal to think differently, I think then it's created room for a lot of things that we didn't have before. And then now people are trying to sift through all of those things and find out who they actually are in the middle of all the voices from everywhere speaking at them. So I think that's why I think social media plays a huge part into why society is where it is now.
Yeah.
Jem, where did the change happen? Like, man, us guys grew up in 80s, 90s. So
80s?
when
No one grew up in the
okay,
80s.
I had like 4 years in the 80s.
Did you? There's
Yes.
no way.
But I was probably too young to understand.
But we're all millennials.
Yeah,
We're all
and the
millennials.
older generation of
90s, yes,
millennials,
of course.
that's a bit conservative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, historically speaking,
Mm-hmm.
when did we start accepting and letting these things in?
Yeah. So I think we need to go back to like 100 years ago.
Oh wow.
So issues of gender, sexuality and all have always been an issue as long as human beings have been around. But it's never been an acceptable thing. It's been, you're weird, do your weirdness in your house, don't bring it out, don't talk about it. And that's how we function for the most part. And I think there was an unspoken rule, like the family is a basic unit of our society. And so the roles were very clear that there's a mom, there's a dad, there's children, and everybody's role was pretty defined. But we always had one or two strange people in the society that we didn't talk about. And then now we come to the 1920s that all this started happening. So the gay rights movement started organizing itself around the 1920s. But it wasn't a thing. It was still, what are you talking about? Why is this a conversation? Like, there are other real issues. You're just strange people, so they're not accepted by society. They were still kind of shunned, but they began to organize themselves around that time. Mm-hmm. So many things were happening around the same time. So going back a bit, from the late 1800s coming into the 1900s, there was the women's movement and rights for women to vote. So there was a lot of civil things happening at the same time. So the women were given the right to vote, and so now they kind of had a say in matters. Still not as much as the men did, but they kind of had a say in matters. And then now the gay rights movement comes in, and of course nobody's listening to them because like, no, this is not a thing, you guys are weird and everything. And then fast forward to the time of the world wars, especially World War II. World War II is what really changed everything. So even for Africans, World War II is what made Africans realize, oh, these people can die too. This is how all this fighting for independence things also started. Like, there was a lot of civil unrest happening after World War II. So the men have gone off to war. Many of them didn't come back. A few came back, but the ones who came back were broken physically, maybe you're maimed. And so the things that were normally men's roles, to go out, to provide, to protect, weren't happening anymore. So women had to kind of step up, especially when the men were away during war. And there was, like, in the employment circles, there were things that women did. You could be a teacher, you could be a nurse, those nice nurturing roles, but nothing more. But during this period, there was a void. And so women had to step into engineering, they had to step into aviation, they had to step into spaces that were considered typically for men. And so after the men came back, the women were empowered. They're like, I don't have to sit in the house and just give birth and cook. Like, there's more to me. I can do more stuff. So the men who've come back are emotionally damaged. They are physically
PTSD.
maimed. Their egos are, there's a lot happening.
Yeah.
And then the women have been holding it down, and they're just like, we can keep holding it down.
Right, yeah.
And so again, another movement started around there from the 60s coming into the 70s, the feminist movement, because they're like, now we're in the workforce with the men, we need equal rights as the men. We need to allow our children, our daughters, to be educated at the same level as the men. The issue of contraceptives came around the same time. It's like, yeah, my body, my choice. So there was all these things. There were positives to it, but there were also negatives to it, because all this is affecting the family unit. So the absent dads, the empowered women, and then around the same time in the US, we're having the civil rights movement, the African Americans also stepping up to say we need equal rights as the whites. So between the Second World War ending, 50s coming into the 60s, everyone wanted recognition. Everyone is looking for freedom. Everyone is looking for understanding. And most of those groups made sense. But in the midst of all that, the gay rights movement was re-energized, because like if the blacks can have their rights given, if the women have their rights given, then we are a minority as well. So it gained momentum. And there were riots happening. I think there are a lot of those things that you can read about, especially coming into the 70s and how they gained momentum. And so they still weren't accepted. For the longest time, the LGBTQ community was considered, being LGBTQ was considered a mental health issue. And then at some point, things just started evolving, because studies showed that, okay, they're not a risk to the workplace, or they're not... Like so many things came up, and they decided, okay, just maybe we need to listen here. But the other thing they were doing behind the scenes, which I think is extremely smart and none of us was paying attention, is that they started investing in every influential area of society. They invested in politics. So they were funding political parties, because they know if we fund this person, then they can drive our agenda. They invested heavily in media. When I talk about social media, that's what they did. They made sure that we're going to change how you people think. So on one side, we're influencing laws, and we are giving ourselves more rights. And for the most part, they really made sure that they've put themselves out there as victims. So it became a human rights issue instead of a morality issue. So once that shift happened, then it was very hard to put it back in the box, because now it looks like you're just not accepting of people. And how are they harming you? How is their sexuality affecting you? Well, if you are free to be what you are, then why can this person also be free to be what they are? So the next 40 years, things just progressed, and they moved from being weirdos to, okay, now we are sympathetic, to, you know what, this is an alternative lifestyle, and that's just how it is. So there was a lot that happened in between. We can't say that one thing happened for us to get here. It was everything. Of... Yes, and all those things, the problem is they were affecting the basic family unit. So now when you come to gender roles, then we have girls growing up not understanding what being a female is about, or what being a male is about, and boys not understanding what being a male is about. And so everything is kind of mixed up. And so when somebody presents a new idea to you and tells you, you're a girl and you don't like playing with Barbie dolls, you don't like pink, I don't think you're a girl. So an idea is brought in, and so a struggle you didn't have is introduced to you, yeah. And now you're like, maybe I'm not a girl. But yeah, so that's how we got here. This is how the confusion started.
It's interesting you mentioned that, they made sure everything is in, like even now, if you have to do anything rainbow, I remember COVID had some rainbow masks. I remember I went with one to church. So someone doesn't pose. I'm like, guys, it's 7. Like,
you're affiliated.
Count them. So it's like you can't even do things because it's been
a whole agenda.
It's like you're picking a side
I know,
already.
right?
Yeah, I want to know though, because like you spoke about sexual identity with regards to the gender conversation, and I was wondering, how does sexual identity then speak into gender roles? Do you think that's where the confusion began? Because you mentioned the LGBTQ community. So they're saying they don't identify as that sex because they feel they have more feminine or masculine. Like if they're a man, they have more feminine qualities. So they feel like they need to change their sex as well to reflect the identity that they feel. So you feel like that's where the confusion started. So because then they started even with the labeling, it's not just LGBTQ anymore. It's just
Keep adding every day. Yeah.
Plus. So it's all of that. So you think sexual identity is what has caused our society to move to this place where now the conversation is gender identity as well?
I think many times they stem from the same place, but sexual identity is a bit different because sexual identity is about what you're attracted to, and that has a lot to do with how your mind translates what happens to you. So you find in a situation like, for example, a girl raised by a single mom, and you saw your mom struggle to make life make sense to you. All you know is that men leave. Men are never there. Men are not consistent. And then, God forbid, you happen to go through a traumatic situation with a man. And so how your brain translates that is that the men are the enemy. What happens is that your attraction now turns to women because women make you feel safe. Women are present. Women do the things that you assume men should do but don't do. Mm-hmm. So your attraction becomes skewed based on your understanding of the reality around you. I know for the longest time there was this conversation about are people born gay, and there's no such thing. There's no gay gene. It comes in your socialization. It's the environment. It's the things you're exposed to and how your brain translates the things that you're exposed to. So,
and most of the time it's the pain and
it's usually negative things or
that happen to you.
Yeah, or it's how you have been socialized. Mm-hmm. Like you'll find many girls who have grown up in a boys' household, so they're more skewed to like things that guys like, and then you come into this other space and other girls are just like, oh, she behaves like a guy, so whatever it is she doesn't have, that's what she's attracted to in someone else. So you start getting attracted to girls because you don't know what it means to be a girl because you've always been around guys. So it doesn't even have to be trauma. It just has to be how you have understood your reality and how it translates in your mind.
So it's like, are the trans I don't know, what is it? I don't even know if the terms are correct because they're called transgender, but they change sexes. So for example, someone like Caitlyn Jenner, right? She changed her gender, her sex, but then she's still attracted to females. I don't even know what to call it. Listen, he's still attracted to females. So whatever he's attracted to remains constant because even when he was a man, he was still attracted to women. But now that he's trans, he's still attracted to, or she's still attracted to women.
So in the case of Caitlyn Jenner, and for most trans people, the struggle is you don't feel comfortable in your own body. And to be fair, I don't think anybody does. Like, there are moments where you're just like, I wish I had longer legs, or I wish I... Like, there's so many things that about you, especially when you're a teenager, when you're younger, you're just like, oh my God, I want more lashes, I want something. Like, there's always something you're not completely satisfied with in your body. So, but for most trans people, they'll tell you that the body just didn't feel like them. And so it has nothing to do with attraction. So this has nothing to do with the relationship between them and anybody else. It's that their body doesn't reflect their reality. And so for the longest time, gender dysphoria was actually categorized as a medical condition. I still think that it's a medical condition because it's you not connecting with your reality.
Was it also removed from the abnormal psychology?
It depends on who you ask. Yeah, because now it's not... Because now this issue has moved from being a mental or a biological issue into a political and
social issue.
Yes. So depending on who you're talking to, they could tell you, yes, gender dysphoria is a medical condition where your mind doesn't translate with your reality or things like that. But for other people, it should be like, no, there's nothing like gender dysphoria. You're just trans and you're allowed to become the person that you think you're supposed to be.
Right.
So yeah, that's where things got complicated because now we're just gonna completely ignore science and everybody can be and feel what they want to be. If you identify as a unicorn,
oh wow,
please fly. Like yeah, and that's a very confusing space to be in as a society when everyone is allowed to engage with what they think they are in their minds.
Right.
Because at what point do we then draw the line? Because I want to be trans rich. my bank account does not reflect that, but I'm like, I'm born to be a princess. I'm supposed to just be
Half
rich
the time
and
I feel like I'm
pampered.
80. I'm an 8-year-old trapped in like a
Yeah,
20-something-year-old
I
body.
know.
That could be a thing. It could be trans age. And,
wow.
let's force people to treat you like that.
We have decided we are going all
Please,
south.
when I enter my tattoo, everybody needs to get up for me.
Yeah.
Because I feel 80. I cannot be standing.
Or you just said, I'm Caucasian. How dare you be discriminate against me
I'm not
racially?
black.
Yeah. What do you mean? That should be a thing. Like, I'm like, if all of us decide we're gonna just go with what we feel, then society
now
really
that you
struggles.
mention it, like literally that's how it is. Like I wake up today and I'm like, I don't like this. So
I'm going to identify as...
I'm not gonna just deal with it by myself. Society needs to acknowledge what
Right.
it is I want and what I feel.
Ben Shapiro famously calls it mainstreaming delusion.
Yeah.
He says we're mainstreaming delusion by, if I say I'm a radio and I demand that everybody treats me like a radio, like
You should.
you should take me to a mental institution.
Yeah.
You shouldn't then start treating me like I am a radio.
That's the tragic thing that happened, and I really struggled with how long can we make this? Can this last for? Like,
I
it's a
wonder.
trend, and especially after 2015 and where
Especially in
everybody was allowed to get
2020
married
during
and
COVID.
everything.
I feel like when lockdown happened, and then now everybody was home interacting with everybody else via social media. I think even that, I think there's been an abnormal spike, and sadly, suicide rates among the trans community also really spiked.
Because the truth is, you're looking for something that is not there. Many trans people actually transition and then transition back or kill themselves when they realize that, okay, I changed into the body I think I'm supposed to be,
And it
but
still
that
wasn't
void
it.
is
Still
still
not
there.
happy, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the problem, that we're looking for. There's something we're looking for, and we assume that it can be filled by physical things, and that's not it.
Right.
So now that we've seen the drama that's all around, I think I'll ask B. What's the ideal though?
What's the ideal? Yeah, I think as we're all like ministers of the gospel, I think it's like only fair to just find out what does the Bible actually say about gender and identity. And the Bible has it's very clear, and very coherent from beginning to end what the Lord intended for man and woman to be. Because in the beginning, we're told in Genesis, he says he created human beings, male and female, he created them. So we're created male and female by design. It's not by accident. Like you didn't choose to be who you are, or like God didn't give us the liberty of making the choice. But it's not by accident that you're a female, which means you're going to be a daughter, you're going to be a sister, you're going to be a wife, and you're going to be a mother. It's not by accident, it's absolutely by design. So the Lord intended for us to live in a specific way and fulfill specific roles for a reason. So I think sometimes it's like, and I think majority of what is going on today is a power thing. I think a lot of it as well, the gender identity issue and why we want to identify as different things is because, and the reality is, for a long time, patriarchy has done a lot of disservice to women. We don't, it would be unfair for the church to not acknowledge that. It's done a lot of disservice, but then the feminist movement as well, while it started out noble, has
It went
also...
south.
The extreme of it now is becoming, we don't just hate men, we want to be
anti-men.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, let's get rid of them, let's replace them,
Exactly.
whatever
We don't
they can
need
do.
them.
Yeah.
We don't need them, and that's not true. Like leadership, the Bible is also very clear that leadership was given to the man and the woman as the helper for the man to achieve their God-given purpose.
Yeah.
And I think also the another thing that the church has done wrong is also underplay the role of a woman in helping the man achieve his purpose. So a lot of the time, I think it's oppression and power that's made people now want to rebel from what the ideal should be. It's not, like we said, it's by design. God made it that you become who you are. And I think when you have feelings of, I want to be different, or I feel different, I think the choice isn't for us to embrace those feelings. I think the choice then is for us to wrestle with God about those feelings and be like, Lord, this is how I feel. I don't feel like I am at home in my body. Like, I need you to help me understand this. And if we're honest, the Lord is faithful and the Holy Spirit will help you navigate through all those challenges, because we know through the Bible that even the challenges we experience are still by design. God is still able to use them, and He allows them to happen to us for specific reasons and reasons we don't understand, but He does. So as long as we trust Him and we allow Him to speak into those situations, He's able to pull us from it and allow us to pull others from it too.
I think I had a question. Have you guys struggled with the role that maybe growing up you saw women taking? Like, did you ever get to a place where you struggle? It's not that you're like, okay, now I identify as a man, but are there spaces where you're just like, if this is what it means to be a woman, I'm out?
Oh yeah, for sure. I absolutely. When I was younger, I even still now, I still identify as a feminist, except I disagree with how far they've taken it. But I'm just very pro. There's so many things that you see in society that I completely wanted no part of. I'm like, or sometimes like even in the workplace, I think when I started working, it's like someone would want tea, for example, and
you
because
the woman will
they would send
get
the woman, I'd be like, I'm not doing it. Or
your wife.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Or the woman automatically the secretary for a meeting. I'm like, I'm not taking notes. Get a man to take notes. Just because I feel like it's the role that you've boxed me in, and automatically I feel like if you've boxed me in somewhere, I want to rebel.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to show you that there's different. I can be dynamic. I am a woman, but I can still do a lot of other things too. Yeah. So I think even I've personally wrestled with it. I hated the time housewife, by the way. I really did. Now I want it more than I'm just like, please someone come work so I can
I will
stay
sit
at
in
home.
the house and watch series all day.
I feel like we have, as women, we have so much responsibility. Every day, like I pause and I'm like, oh my goodness, like we do so much as women. Like, can we just, like we are the carrying a child is. I don't know. I've not carried one, but for the people I've worked with,
you should be paid
like,
to do it.
I know, right? Like you give birth, you're home, like you get pregnant, your life changes. Like you're the one who has to adjust. Like, okay, I can't do this, I can't do that, and your life stops for a while. Yes,
and
it's
to
lovely.
speak on that, the equality then that the feminists are pushing for is to demand that even in my state of, for example, pregnancy, I should still compete at the same level that a fully functional
it's
man.
Not possible.
That's what I'm saying. I don't understand.
That's crazy.
I definitely want those favors because
I know
I need them to be able to compete effectively at
I think in the UK you get 9 months. Maternity,
something
actually.
ridiculous like that. It's interesting. I feel what Bato is talking about in terms of, for the longest time I'm just like, I don't want to do that. Let me cook. I'm very I don't mind. Okay, now I'm cooking is a problem
story.
But I was just like, I don't mind cooking. I'm very good at serving people. Maybe it's just being a firstborn, so I was always responsible. When my mom has visitors, I'd be the one serving. And so I don't mind doing that, even though those are assumed to be feminine roles. But I also don't want you to assume that I can't change my own oil and I can't do... Like, there are things my dad taught me and I'm like, don't assume that because I'm female, I have to sit and wait for you to come and do it.
Like, I can't take myself to the garage.
Yeah, like there are things I'm like, I want to do this. This is cool. I can do this even though you decide that it's guys who do it. And for the longest time, there was that struggle. And I think for me, it's interesting. My dad was very good at allowing me to be whatever I want to be, and not like boxing me in. You're a girl, so there are things you do and there are things that boys do.
Go stay in the kitchen with mommy.
Like he exposed me to everything. And so at some point I realized I'm actually very outspoken about some of these things, and I'm not supposed to be. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't want to be a guy. Like, I get what men do. I'm not trying to be a man. I just don't want to be a woman in a box. And I remember the very first time when I started reading the Bible about submitting and gender roles, I'm like, oh my God, this is such a patriarchal society. At some point I was just like, God, are you chauvinistic? Because I'm like, some of these things. But then now I think the older I've become, I'm like, God had a point. I don't want to worry about paying bills. Like, I'm worrying about so many other things. And especially what Bato is talking about, like being pregnant. I'm like, oh, please give me all the favors in the world. I'm okay. I'm not a man. I'm not trying to be a man in the workplace. And the other day I was joking with my husband and telling him, I understand why employers are biased against women. I'm like, right now I'm not
it's going
at
to
the
set you
same
back if you're
level
going
with the man.
9 months
in
are going to
terms
set you back in your career,
in
right?
terms of
actually
how
a
much
thing.
I'm
People
delivering, I'm
prefer
not.
male
I
employees.
actually realized, like the logic, I used to say these people are
They're just doing their
patriarchal, they
math.
just anti-women. Now I'm like, no, it makes sense. Me giving birth does not add value
That's
to your
And then
company.
every
So it
time-
makes sense
every
that
time
you
your baby
prefer
is
man.
unwell.
Exactly. Like a man
And
can
you're not
function.
going to
You
just
need
have
a
one
day
child
off.
as
I
well.
know.
Like a man can function. A man will be like, oh, the baby is sick.
The mom will sort.
take the baby to the hospital. Here's the money for it. A woman, your life stops because the child is sick. Why? Whether we like it or not, it's how God created us. Psychologically, we are naturals, whether we want to agree with that or not. And so I had to get to a place where I reconcile these things within myself and with the Lord. I'm like, I want to
Okay.
be a woman who's able to do all these different
Right.
things. Like, don't put me in a box, but I have no intention of competing with a man. I don't think we're equal. I think we're different. And it's a good thing.
And it's
And there's
complementary
beauty
roles.
in that
Complementary.
difference,
Yes.
you know?
It's at the core of our identity who we are. It's like God made us that to fulfill, because we're made in his image and likeness. So the male part represents some mystery in him, and then the female part does the same. So I think it's at what James is saying, it's at the core of our being. And I had Jordan Peterson talk about this actually. He said the countries that have done the most to get gender equality, where women and men play at the same level, we find them moving farther and farther apart to stereotypical roles. So if I have the choice to become either a scientist, an engineer, all of that, or I have the choice to do nursing, you find more women in societies where they actually allow everyone to do whatever they want. You find more women doing the more nurturing roles and the men doing the more physical or scientific roles, which I thought was very interesting. So it's like the push for equality actually almost like nullifies itself out, because if you then let society be society, people end up where God intended for people to end up, which is very funny. I think that's the thing we don't realize as a society, is that the brokenness of whatever we've become now is as a result of the fall from the beginning. Men were given power, and then of course because of sin, then they took that power and did something
Became
with it that God didn't want.
dominating.
Yeah, became now dominion over the woman, and even that itself, isn't that a consequence of the fall? It's
Yes,
like
it
the
was.
man will
Genesis,
have dominion.
Yeah.
And then now and because what you mentioned, because of the World War, I think it's women now realize, wait a minute, I can do this
can
by
do this.
myself.
Dumping on me, and I can do it myself.
Yeah.
I don't need you.
Yeah, and then it
Move on.
becomes an identity issue for the guy who comes back, and it's like, what is my place now? Like, what
Yeah.
am I supposed to do? How do I don't feel needed. I always have such a problem with that. When people say you need to make a power, that's one of the, even me, I recognize that as a flaw. And say you need to make the man feel needed. I'm like, no, I don't. He needs to get a therapist.
Men need.
Oh, wow.
Men. So it again. This took me a while. Jesus.
Had to do some work.
Long conversations with my husband and other men around. I'm like, so it's not you who have the issue. It's just psychologically how a man thinks,
Right.
that a man needs to have a defined role for them to thrive. And this is also part of the reason that the more we've empowered women, the more useless the men have become, because they don't know what to do now. Because if my role is not defined, what value am I bringing to your life? Let me just go and do something else
Yeah.
where I'll feel needed. So that part took a while for me to understand. I'm like, yeah, even me, I used to think you just need to talk to a therapist. Like you're just, you're needy. You need to fix
I'm not
this.
going to validate those
Yeah,
thoughts.
I don't think so. But when I understood how a man's brain works, it's the same way women need affirmation and affection. So when they withhold that, we feel like, oh my God, he doesn't care, he doesn't love me. That's the same thing he feels when he's not feeling needed and affirmed. And I was just like, okay, that makes sense. Why didn't our grandparents explain it to us like that? That would have saved
Did
us a
they
lot
know?
of. Yeah, that's the thing. So the man either takes two roles. He's not there, or if he's there, he's dominating you to prove his masculinity. And for women, the opposite. We're supposed to be helpers. If you're not helping, we're manipulating. And that's, you'll find that in every society, that women who have been dominated, when they get an opportunity, they will hide things from their husbands. Like, they'll do all these things, and that has not sorted out the issue. The issue is that there's a void this man has, and there's a void this woman has. And until we get to a place where we're like, God had actually made provision for this when he said, husbands, love your wives. We're not told to love our husbands. Okay, we need to love them. But we're not told to love them because the void for a woman is love. And wives, submit to your husband because that's respect, and that's what.
Yeah, so I think it's understanding what those two, what love actually means and what submission actually means.
Yeah. So it all boils down to what I'm hearing a lot is on the exposure bit, even with the feminist movement. You are okay until someone told you, by the way, you can do what a man can do, even better or something, right? Back to the Bible and what the Bible says. We've had arguments like, Joseph was gay because the dad made him a colored coat. Back to you guys
had that one.
Oh my goodness,
that's a very interesting argument.
Like, they actually say that they're like, you know what, guys, you can't say.
So every man who's worn a colored coat.
And this is why he ran away from Potiphar's wife, because he was gay.
Yes, thanks. It goes all the way down. Yeah. So
and we're not told much about his
arguments, wife. How do you like? Yeah, the Bible is
very straightforward.
It's very straightforward. What would you tell someone who thinks like that?
I feel like even if Joseph was not straight, it still doesn't change the Bible's message that human beings are broken and fallen. Like even if he were, he's not the perfect man. He's not the standard of example that we should follow. It's Jesus. Like that's who we should look at and say, this is the person I'm meant to be. And I think that's the things the society doesn't understand. It's like however we feel and however those we look up to feel is not the standard. The standard is always Jesus. Where we are as a society now actually proves the Bible's message that human beings are broken and fallen and in need of a savior.
And no matter how the standards keep changing, the world standards keep changing, God's standard is the same. The Bible never changes, it's the same.
Your heart is deceitful
above all things
and desperately wicked. Who can understand it?
Right.
And the same Bible says, guard your heart, because from it flows all the issues of life.
And that's very countercultural as well, because the message of the culture today follow your heart. Do what makes you happy. I actually have that. I had that for a long time as my Instagram bio. Do what makes you happy. Then I was like, actually don't. Actually, maybe not do what makes you happy.
Thieves enjoy stealing. Should they do that?
Oh man. We all talk about the things we enjoy doing that we know we're not meant to be doing, right?
We're all broken people in need of a savior.
Yeah.
And maybe to add onto what you're saying about Joseph, the Bible can mean anything you want it to mean. Like, the number of times I've read the Bible and I'm like, oh my God, if I did not fear the Lord, I could start a cult and be very rich.
Yeah.
Like there's so many things I could exploit. I'm like, I see how this could be used to, get me some followers and some money and stuff like that. But when you're actually reading the Bible, then you need to ask yourself, is it prescriptive or is it descriptive? Mm-hmm. The whole Old Testament is just descriptive. It's, please don't repeat this. Don't marry 700 women, but I don't think in this economy it's possible. But now you just don't have sex with 700 women because, there are a couple of people who tell you things and they're just like, do you know these women's names? Like, by the time you're sleeping with 100 women, how much time do you have? And do you have conversations before? Like, there's a lot there.
I would need to understand. Like, literally, I've written it down as one of the questions I have to ask.
Solomon,
please explain. I'm like, just explain.
Yeah. So when we are reading the Bible, then we need to ask, what does the Bible actually say? And the actually saying is not what does it describe, is what is it saying to me about this situation? And so most of the things that we, when we're talking about morality and things like that, then we come to the New Testament and especially the epistles that break it down. And I think the most important one, okay, not the most important one, all the Bible is important, but the teachings of Jesus in the Gospels, and then the book of Romans, which is the universal epistle, because that one goes beyond culture, goes beyond time. The others, you could say, oh, this was a cultural message, this was a contextual message. So whatever it is that we're talking about, it needs to come back to what does God say about this? Because if we all go by our feelings, I think we'd set the world on fire. Because how then do I decide that your feelings are nullified, mine are more important?
Right.
Because then we have no moral ground to stand on for anything. This is why we even need laws. And for a judge to listen to your case, they can't be impartial. They have to be impartial. Sorry, they can't be involved in any way. So there has to be a standard outside of ourselves by which we are able to measure morality. If all of us just say, do you, whatever makes you happy, I think we're gonna set the world on fire.
It's interesting. I was listening to a sermon by Tony Kiama this morning about how Christians, we treat the word of God as a buffet. You know how you go to a buffet table and you choose, I don't want veggies, I can eat that at home, I can get this, and that's how we treat God's word. We go like, this fucking for me, cool, I'll take this in. This one, no, this one is actually, and you even manipulate it and change it. And even at the end of the day, we're in this world, guys. Like, until Jesus comes, please come sooner. We are still here. We still have to deal with issues of gender and identity. We still have to handle these people who are even probably amongst our young people. So how do we do this? How do we respond? If one of you young people comes to you and like, I think I'm gay, I'm not sure of my identity and what's going on, how do you respond? Because I think for the longest time, it's one of those untouchables, you're gay, you're in the worship team, sit out, and no one even does follow up for you or checks how to you're
tainting our worship.
This community. Yeah, like, how are you even here? This is wrong, it's evil. How do we as Christians, how do we as youth ministers respond to such?
I don't know. I think the first step is discipleship, really. I think we have to acknowledge the fact that the church has failed massively when it comes to discipling people who have gender dysphoria or sexual identity crisis. The church has failed maybe because the church didn't know what to do, or the church in their head kind of separated one sin from other sins and categorized it as bigger than others.
Yet sin is sin.
Sin is sin. So and I think it's more like, because other sin you can hide, I feel like we should put more effort into actively discipling people who have sexual sin, like people who struggle with sexual sin, is because that it destroys them from the onset. Because the sin sometimes that you don't realize the consequences of it, like the future or whatever, but that one destroys them from the onset. You live a completely miserable life from the moment you decide to open that door. So I think the church should, with love and a lot of prayer and a lot of care, just disciple young people into figuring out that their identity is not from how they feel or who they are, or even their families, or even things that you think are noble. Your identity is first and foremost as a child of God, and you are who God says you are, not what society says you are or what you think you are. So I think I would say the thing is discipleship.
Yeah. I love listening to Jacky Hill Perry, and anyone who comes to me and is struggling with gender identity or their sexuality, I always recommend her. And I think the first time I heard her speaking, she's just like, being a Christian is all about being straight. And I was like, wait, what? And then
There's no command in the Bible that says you have to be straight. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I was like, wait, what? So I actually went to listen to her because I was like, what is this woman saying? And then she breaks it down and says how the church has an obsession with making people straight. And we don't do this for any other sin. We don't tell you, stop stealing and then come to church, we'll help you. Or stop whatever sin you're struggling with and then come to church, we help you. But for some reason, when it comes to homosexuality and gender dysphoria, we're like, yeah. And that is completely contradictory of what the gospel is. It's, you're broken, you're sinful, come to Christ.
As you
He will
are.
be the one to transform you. He'll be the one to build you. He'll be the one to give you an identity and show you what your purpose is, because your purpose is tied to your identity. So everything about you, your gender, family you're born to, the race that you belong to, all those things are tailor-made for you to achieve your purpose. And in Acts 17, that's what Paul tells us. It's like, God, the times and seasons where you are, everything about you was created so that you would be able to find God and live out your purpose. So I feel like for the church, we have been very lazy because it's not easy to engage with this. Because where is the line? If we tell you come in, does it look like we are accepting your agenda. And if we say stay out, does it mean then there are sins that Christ could not have died for? So that's one of the challenges we have. But the other issue on the other side now, speaking from the side of the church, is there's no other sin that is an identity issue. Nobody else goes around doing a parade and says, thieves need an association, murderers need an association, pedophilias need an association. This is the one sin that has become about identity. And so it's hard for the church to take a stand, because they're just like, you have taken everything about yourself away, and you have summarized to you are your sexuality. So how do we engage with that without
to the point where if we say anything about it, we're at the risk of losing our social status?
Yes. Yeah. So I'm like, nobody else gets triggered when you say, oh, I don't agree with this. But for people in the LGBTQ community, if I say I don't agree with your sexuality, then it's like I have cancelled you completely as a person.
You're labeled a bigot.
Yeah, but your sexuality is not who you are. It's a part of your existence.
Yeah.
So we can be able to relate and agree and bond on other things outside of that one issue. So for the church, I know for the longest time that has been the problem, that we don't know how to relate without looking like we're endorsing, but we also don't want to look like we are hating you. So it's just easier to just, let's not talk about it until it has to come up. But I agree with what Bato is saying, that it all comes to discipleship, that it's what Jesus did. It's invite somebody into your space. It's allow them to know you, to understand you. Present the gospel to them, not as just words, but they can see it in your everyday life. Just the way you would disciple somebody else who's not struggling with their sexuality, that's the same way you disciple the person who's struggling with their sexuality or their gender. It's about exposing them to Christ. When they're exposed to Christ, it's the Lord who delivers. It's not up to us to make you straight or whatever it is.
Assistant Holy Spirit.
Yeah, we're not assistant Holy Spirit. It's the Lord's work to transform people. So I feel like as a church, personally, all the people I have dealt with, I've been very clear that this is not what God says about you. Your sexuality is not who you are. You can't just show up and say, I'm gay. I don't come and say I'm straight. Being straight has nothing to do with me and loving Jesus. Yeah, like it's not
I've
who
literally
you
never
are.
said that in my life, which is so funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's we separate the issue from the person, and then now I'm able to disciple and love the person and allow God to deal with the issues, because we can't transform anyone.
And I think get more stories. We need to get more stories of people who the Lord has redeemed from that lifestyle.
Yeah.
I think it's because another reason I think the church is very stoic about the identity conversation is because it's not something you can relate to. So you don't know how to deal with it. I feel like anyone can empathize with liars or thieves or whatever. You've been put in situations where all these things have been a possibility, or you've done these things. So I think the identity conversation is just like I don't understand how a person can get to that level of depravity. So they're very stoic because it's not something they can relate to. So I think if we get more ministers or maybe more people who can disciple those people in those communities who've gone through it as well and come out the other side, I think it would be very helpful without judging them. Allow them to come out and speak out.
Is a big issue. I come out and say I'm gay,
or I had the feelings, or whatever.
Yeah, so your eyes are just like, oh my goodness, how you and you're in church and you're serving, you're a worship leader.
Yeah,
you have made all of us
I'm a worship
sin.
leader and I lied in the morning.
I know.
It's like,
sin is sin.
Sin is sin.
Whether you kill, you steal,
you
it's all
destroy.
sin.
Yeah, and I think that what Jem as well said is really true. Is the sense that we should. There's so much resource out there too.
Yeah.
Maybe we might not have ministers, or especially in Africa, I think it'd be, or in Kenya, it would be very. I don't know that we're at that level where someone can stand in the pulpit and announce that they were homosexual before, or that they had gender identity issues before. I think it's just getting all those resources online. I would definitely recommend Gay Girl, Good God.
Good God. Yeah.
It's such an easy read as well, or any of Jackies, or there's so many people out there who've written so many books. And I think even for the ministers of the gospel, it's very important to familiarize yourself with the language as well, and how to disciple people, how those people were discipled, so that we can also replicate the same.
Yeah. So the church can't afford to stay out of this any longer. We need to be in it. We need to get our hands dirty. We need to put in the work.
With a lot of prayer.
Yes.
There's a time there was, even as we wrap up, there was a time there was an argument. Okay, it wasn't an argument. It was a discussion in my ropes class. So there's this girl who has a gay friend, and I think their mom has just taught them to be warm and welcoming to them. And it was such a debate, there was now like two sides. And the one of the verse that stood out was bad company corrupts good morals. And it was like, where do you draw the line so that, yes, you are loving this person, and you now that we've learned, you need to disciple them. Where do you draw that line whereby it's not, especially for a teenager? You see, for us guys, we are older, the lines and all. For teens who are either dealing with a friend who is struggling with identity, where do they draw the line to know that, hey, this is the far I can go? Because there's aspect whereby you can easily be influenced. Where do you draw that line? Or how would you advise a teen? I don't think we even concluded that. It became too hot. We're like, okay, guys.
Yeah.
I think the answer is the same. Discipleship. Yeah. I feel like if there's someone walking with that teenager or someone walking with that young person, and then they have another friend who's struggling with those things, it's an opportunity for them to bring that friend into a discipleship space. And I feel like if they're being discipled, then that voice, the voice of their mentor or their leader is much louder than the voice of their peers. So I think it's, again, the same conversation. As long as we are actively discipling every single member, because a lot of the time you find church people doing Christianity by themselves, which I think that's where
the problem is.
That's why social media is so loud. That's why because the church has taken a step back when it comes to discipleship. But if we're constantly having people walk with people, there's no way we'll miss it. There's no way, we'll lose people to.
I think I agree with B on that one. There are many questions I get asked, and I think right now the group that I have like 3 tiers of leadership. So the first tier is the guys who I meet with every week. I know what is happening in their lives, who likes who's dating who, and I'm very invested in their lives, and I've taught them to be invested in the next level of leadership the same way. And so for them, there are things that they say, and I'm like, wow, these kids are quoting me. Like, they have spent so much time with me. They understand how I think. They understand how to translate the Bible for other people.
Yeah.
And so there's that level of discipleship. So there are things that they'll ask. They'll say, okay, this I'm not so sure, but let me go and ask my pastor. And so they'll come and ask me, and then you'll hear them talking to somebody else about it. They're like, wow, this discipleship thing actually works. And that's the model that we see in the Bible. Like that Jesus could not be everywhere with everyone, but the disciples were taught, and they went and taught other people and went and taught other people. And so we're able to have accountability. We're able to make sure that people are standing, are growing in their faith without one person actively being the one that is consistently in everybody's life.
Right.
So if we're discipling, then I think all these questions get answered. One of our pastors recently said, if you're not discipling your church, somebody else is. So the problem is who is it that is discipling them? Yeah. True. Whatever voice is loudest in their life, that's who they're following.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
So it all boils down to love them and disciple them.
Yeah.
Any other parting shot, even as we wrap up?
Even so, Lord Jesus, come.
Good one. Cool.
Yeah, I would say, like, if anyone is struggling with those issues, I think I know for a fact that the Lord welcomes people to wrestle with things with Him, first and foremost. Even if you don't, with an absence of like leaders or people who can disciple them, just wrestle with the Lord with these issues. The Lord is so faithful. He'll give answers to where answers are needed.
Amen. Thank you. It's been the Pop of Girls and
Podcast.
It's been amazing.
Like, share, subscribe.
I really wanted to say it's been the pop of girls and blossom.
Why not? It's been the pop of girls. I'm Blossom.
I'm Bubbles.
And I'm Buttercup.
Bye.
So that's it for this week. Make sure to tune in the next time we're posting a podcast, and make sure to leave a comment behind on what you think about these issues. Until next time, see you guys later. Make sure to subscribe.